The silent hum of the galactic chamber vibrated through the air as Ambassador Elias Durant stood at the center of the room, his hands clasped tightly behind his back. Despite the enormity of the moment, his posture remained straight, the tension in his body apparent only in the slight trembling of his fingers. He had prepared for this moment for years, but now that it was upon him, the weight of it all felt heavier than any diplomatic negotiation he had ever faced. The room around him was vast, designed in an architecture so foreign to human eyes that it felt like the very walls were alive, shifting with the pulse of energy that flowed through the space. Beams of light flickered in geometric patterns, casting reflections on the chrome-like surfaces of the council's dais. The figures seated on the council were not quite human. These were the rulers of the galaxy, made up of countless species, each more distant and alien than the last. Their presence hung heavy in the room, an unspoken reminder of their power and reach. On the far end of the dais sat the Supreme Counselor, a being named Orlask, an entity of great age and wisdom. Orlask's translucent skin glistened like polished crystal, with threads of energy coursing through it. His voice, when it came, was deep and resonant, but tinged with an unspoken edge of finality. "Ambassador Durant," Orlask began, his words measured, "you stand before us today as the representative of a species that has time and time again defied the will of the Galactic Council. Humanity has refused to comply with the very laws that allow peace to exist in the stars." Durant met the Supreme Counselor's gaze, his own expression unwavering. For all the power these beings wielded, they could not break his spirit. He had been sent to this place to negotiate peace, to bridge the divide between humanity and the rest of the galaxy. But he had always known that such a task would not be easy. The Council had no tolerance for the unpredictable nature of humanity. The human race had its own vision, its own way of living and governing. It did not fit the neatly ordered framework the Galactic Council insisted on. "I have never sought to disrupt peace," Durant replied, his voice clear and strong, "only to ensure that humanity is allowed to find its place among the stars. We are not your enemies. We seek only cooperation, not subjugation." There was a murmur among the other members of the Council. A few looked away as though ashamed of the spectacle to come, but most, including the powerful beings seated in the front row, those from the insectoid hegemony of Volith, the crystalline Eklon, and the war-hardened Terralith, looked on with disdain. "You speak of peace, Ambassador, yet your people continue to act outside of our laws," another voice cut in, belonging to the sharp-aimed Kriege, a massive alien covered in dark armored plating. "You are a prime example of humanity's inability to understand the price of unity. You continually reject the terms we offer. Humanity is a loose thread in the fabric of the galaxy. It is time to sever it." Durant's eyes narrowed, but he kept his voice steady. "What are you suggesting?" Orlask's translucent eyes narrowed as well, his form radiating an almost tangible aura of judgment. He stood from his seat, his presence overwhelming as he raised his arms. "Ambassador Durant," he intoned, "you have been given every opportunity to align your species with our way of governance, but instead you choose defiance. Your defiance, while noble in its spirit, has placed your entire species in jeopardy. This is no longer a diplomatic issue. This is a matter of galactic order." Durant's pulse quickened, but his mind remained clear. Something had shifted. He had not expected this. The tension in the room was now palpable, each being staring down at him with cold, calculating eyes. The Supreme Counselor's words had taken on a darker tone, one that suggested the unthinkable was about to happen. "There would be no peace for you, Ambassador," Orlask continued, his voice like a thunderclap in the still air. "The Council has reached its decision. Your species has become a threat to the unity we have fought so long to maintain. As such, we must make an example of you. The sentence is final." Durant felt his stomach drop as the meaning of the Supreme Counselor's words sank in. His eyes flicked from one alien to the next. They had already made up their minds. There was no room for negotiation, no room for mercy. He had failed. He had failed his people. He opened his mouth to speak, to protest, but the words died in his throat as a low mechanical hum filled the air. From the shadows above, a hovering orb descended, its surface shimmering with an eerie red glow. "Well, what is this?" Durant demanded, his voice thick with disbelief. Orlos nodded slowly, his expression cold. "A final lesson for humanity." The orb activated with a sudden burst of energy. A painful warmth spread from the center of the room, growing more intense with each passing second. Durant's body trembled as the temperature began to rise. A violent heat built in the atmosphere around him, a burning that was both physical and emotional. He could feel his skin begin to singe, but he stood tall. He could not let them see his fear. He did not speak again, for the pain was too great. Instead, his mind raced, remembering every conversation, every negotiation he had ever had with the Council. There was no escape, no redemption. He had given everything for this moment, for peace, but humanity had been abandoned by the very institution that had once promised it would lead them into the future. The chamber fell deathly silent as Durant's body twisted and contorted in agony. The light of the orb intensified, consuming him completely. In his final moments, he thought of Earth. He thought of his family, his colleagues, his friends. He thought of the human spirit, the spirit that would not bend, even in the face of overwhelming power. And then there was nothing. The body of Ambassador Elias Durant was reduced to ash, his sacrifice a signal to humanity, a signal that the galaxy would never forget. The Council's message was clear. Humanity had no place among them. But the pain of Durant's execution echoed across the stars, and in the hearts of the human race, something deep within them awoke. The shockwave of Durant's death spread like wildfire. Across Earth, every major city, every settlement, every human colony felt the impact. In the United Nations headquarters, the emergency communications channel lit up, flashing with frantic messages from leaders all over the world. General Samantha Ross, standing in front of a massive holographic map of the galaxy, slammed her fist onto the table. "This is not a diplomatic issue anymore. This is war. Humanity will not bow to them." President Alexandra Blackwell sat in her office, her fingers steepled before her face. The weight of Durant's death was heavy upon her, but there was no time for mourning. A decision had to be made. "He will retaliate," President Blackwell said, her voice steady. "Prepare the fleets." The words she spoke reverberated through Earth's military and political command centers. War was inevitable now. The Galactic Council had forced humanity's hand. There would be no going back. As the first fleets were mobilized, the human colonies on Mars, Venus, and the asteroid belt sent reinforcements. Earth's military, once small compared to the massive forces of the Galactic Council, was now fully united under the banner of vengeance. The initial stages of the conflict would be brutal. The humans were outnumbered, outgunned, and outmatched. But there was something the Council did not understand. Humanity's strength did not come from the size of its weapons or the power of its fleets. It came from their spirit, their resilience. They fought not just for survival, but for their honor, their freedom. Beacons burned above the camp and the night sky. Everyone lived. Their spirits sunk and hung. A message was sent to the Galactic Council, one that would echo through the cosmos. "You have burned one of us. Now we burn everything you have built." The war for the future of humanity had begun. Would you like to continue this story or explore another chapter? The heat of Earth's response was swift and inevitable. As word spread of Ambassador Elias Durant's execution, a wave of disbelief, anger, and confusion swept across every nation and every colony. The blood of the human race was now on the hands of the Galactic Council. It wasn't just the governments that reacted, it was the people. Thousands took to the streets, not in protest, but in a fervor of unity, as if the execution had unlocked a dormant force within the human spirit. For the first time in centuries, humanity was united, not under a single flag or ideal, but by something far older: revenge. They had been wronged, and they would make the Council feel the full weight of that wrath. In the heart of the United Nations building, President Alexandra Blackwell's eyes never left the screen in front of her. It showed the final moments of Durant's life, the pain, the helplessness, the defiance. She had seen it a dozen times, each more gut-wrenching than the last. Durant had been her friend, her colleague. She had trusted him to do the impossible, to bring humanity and the galaxy together. And now he was gone. Her hand trembled, but she forced herself to remain composed. Earth would not falter. She would not falter. "General Ross," she said, her voice calm but carrying the weight of 1,000 decisions, "prepare the military. We are not just defending Earth, we are declaring war on the Galactic Council." General Samantha Ross, ever the stoic military leader, nodded sharply. She turned to the holographic map on the wall, tracing the dotted lines that represented the Council's dominion, the various species and planets that made up the vast network of authority. The human race was scattered thin, confined mostly to Earth, Mars, and a few scattered outposts. They were alone, isolated, and not nearly as advanced as the galactic superpowers that surrounded them. But it didn't matter. No one had taken into account the human spirit, and that, she knew, was the one thing that would make the difference. The news was already spreading across Earth's major colonies. The war had begun. A new weapon. Earth's response was not just a matter of military retaliation. It was the discovery of a new hidden weapon that had been long forgotten. For centuries, humanity had been tinkering with deep space technology, attempting to understand the vastness of the universe and unlock the secrets of the cosmos. Among these ventures was a secret program, codename Orion's Flame. Originally, it had been intended as a deterrent, a response to the growing threat of alien influence, but the sudden death of Durant had forced the hands of Earth's leadership. Orion's Flame was an experimental technology that combined the theoretical physics of dark matter and antimatter, creating a weapon that could devastate entire planetary systems. It had never been fully realized as the technology was deemed far too dangerous. However, now, with the stakes higher than ever before, humanity had no choice but to unlock the potential of the weapon. The discovery of the first successful test was nothing short of a revolution. In the depths of the asteroid belt, a human research station called Hawkins 5 had been working in secret for years. They had been perfecting the core principles of Orion's Flame, attempting to harness energy from the very fabric of space itself. Under the guidance of Dr. Malcolm Rivers, a brilliant but reclusive scientist, the project had been brought to fruition. The first test was nothing more than a controlled burst of energy aimed at a barren rock in the belt. The results were beyond expectation. The explosion was not just catastrophic, it was cosmic in scale. The rock was vaporized in an instant, its particles scattered across the vacuum of space, leaving a black void where once there had been a solid object. The energy output was beyond anything humanity had ever dreamed of. A single strike could render a planet into nothingness. When General Ross was briefed on the results, her eyes narrowed in disbelief. She'd seen advanced weapons in her time, nuclear, plasma, even early attempts at quantum weapons, but this was on another level entirely. The sheer destructive potential of Orion's Flame could obliterate entire fleets in seconds. "It's ready," she said softly. "We can use it. And we will." With the discovery of their new weapon, humanity's strategy shifted. Earth's military leaders no longer saw themselves as just a small, insignificant force fighting for survival. Now they were an empire on the rise, determined to carve their place in the galaxy. They had the technology, they had the will, they had the desire for retribution. And above all, they had something the Council had failed to understand: human ingenuity. For the first time, a unified human front was emerging. General Ross and President Blackwell now controlled a massive, rapidly expanding military network. They had ships at their disposal, fleets of warships equipped with advanced human technologies, ranging from the fleet formations in Earth's orbit to the more distant colonies on Mars. Humanity had also expanded rapidly into the asteroid belt, establishing mining colonies that were crucial to their efforts to sustain their war machine. But now, with the discovery of Orion's flame, they had the upper hand. The first target was a Council outpost on the fringes of Earth's colonized space. A small but strategic location, it was a hub for the Council's military presence in the sector, and taking it would send a message. "We strike first," Ross ordered, her voice cold, calculated. "We send them a clear message that humanity will no longer be subjugated. We take what's ours." The first strike. The assault was planned with precision. A fleet of human warships, led by the flagship Liberator, loaded with a prototype version of Orion's flame, surged through the void. For days, the fleet prepared for the attack, ensuring that every detail was accounted for. General Ross herself oversaw the preparations, constantly revising the strategy to account for any surprises. As the fleet approached the Council outpost, it became clear that they were not alone. The Council had dispatched several defensive ships, a small task force that could easily overwhelm the human fleet in a direct confrontation. But Ross knew they had one advantage. They knew the Council would underestimate their ability to strike first. As the human fleet drew near the outpost, a flurry of communication signals erupted from the enemy ships, but it was too late. With a single command, Ross initiated the firing sequence for Orion's flame. The Liberator unleashed its first blast, a pulse of pure energy that tore through space like a cosmic lance. The resulting shockwave was visible to anyone who had the misfortune of looking at it. The pulse struck the heart of the Council outpost, and within moments, the entire facility, along with the surrounding fleet, was erased from existence. There was no explosion, no dramatic blast, just a sudden, terrifying absence. The human fleet immediately withdrew, leaving only the emptiness of space in their wake. The message had been sent. The Council's response was swift. But human strategy had already shifted. Earth, for the first time, had made its presence known. No longer the meek observers of galactic politics, humanity was now a power to be reckoned with. As word of the attack spread across the galaxy, it became clear that there was no going back. Humanity was prepared to fight, and they would not stop until they had their revenge. The aftermath. Back on Earth, President Blackwell stood before a screen showing the results of the first strike. Images of the Council outpost being consumed by the devastating power of Orion's flame. "We've done it," she whispered to herself. "We've sent them a message they'll never forget." But there was a quiet unease in her mind. Despite the victory, she knew that the Council would not forgive this. They had just declared war on an entire galaxy, a galaxy far larger and more powerful than anything humanity had ever encountered. The struggle would be long, brutal, and costly, and yet it was a war they had to fight. The alternative, subjugation, was unimaginable. General Ross, standing at attention beside her, nodded grimly. "They won't stop until they crush us, Madam President. But we've shown them what we're capable of. We're ready for what comes next." And so, with the first battle won and the new weapon in their arsenal, humanity entered the galaxy's war. The fires of revenge were lit, and the fate of the galaxy itself hung in the balance. Would you like to explore more of the war, the strategy behind humanity's campaigns, or move on to further developments in the story? The war had officially begun. Humanity, long seen as a fledgling race in a galaxy teeming with power, had suddenly become a force to be reckoned with. But for all the fire that burned in their hearts, the human race was still playing catch-up. The Galactic Council, with its immense wealth, vast fleets, and centuries of technological advancement, was not a foe to be taken lightly. Earth's defenses were strong, but still not enough to stand toe-to-toe with an empire of such magnitude. Still, humanity had something the Galactic Council could not fathom, something primal, something that had always set humans apart from the other species of the galaxy. Vengeance. The immediate aftermath of the attack on the Council outpost sent shockwaves across the galaxy. News traveled fast, and every corner of known space was soon abuzz with the rumor of what had happened. Earth had made a bold strike, and the message had been clear. Humanity would no longer be a passive participant in galactic affairs. The killing of Ambassador Durant had sparked an inferno that would consume the stars. As the days passed, the Council scrambled to assess the magnitude of the attack. What had happened was incomprehensible. One minute their outpost, a critical hub of military operations, had been functioning as normal. The next, it had been completely annihilated. No debris, no wreckage, nothing to suggest what had transpired. "This is impossible," muttered Supreme Counselor Orlosk, gazing at the remains of the outpost on the holographic display. "How could a single strike cause this kind of destruction? What weapon do they possess?" In the dark chambers of the Council, whispers began to spread. There were speculations, theories, but no answers. Earth's primitive weaponry was not capable of such power. At least, that's what the Council had assumed. The truth was far more terrifying. The humans had discovered something the Council had never anticipated. A weapon that could bend the laws of nature itself. A weapon that could rewrite the balance of power in the galaxy. Orion's flame. The technology behind humanity's sudden shift in the balance of power had been buried for decades, an unintended consequence of a program gone awry. During the early days of space exploration, when humanity was still attempting to reach beyond their solar system, a series of deep space research projects had been launched. These projects were designed to explore the mysteries of dark matter and antimatter, forces so volatile and powerful that even the most brilliant minds of the time had no idea how to contain them. One such program, known as Orion, was launched in secret. Its goal was to experiment with the energy contained within these forces, creating a new form of energy that could revolutionize human power. But the project had been abandoned after a catastrophic failure, one that nearly destroyed an entire research station in the process. The knowledge of Orion's flame was lost to history, filed away in classified archives, forgotten by most. But when the time came to strike back at the Council, President Alexandra Blackwell and General Samantha Ross knew they had to dig deep into Earth's forgotten vaults to find something that could level the playing field. And so, the Orion program was rediscovered. Dr. Malcolm Rivers, one of the few surviving scientists from the project, was pulled from obscurity to help. He was a man haunted by the memories of the failed tests, the deaths of his colleagues, and the terrifying potential of the technology. Yet he was also the key to humanity's survival. Rivers had once claimed that Orion's flame was a weapon that could wipe out entire worlds in an instant, a power far beyond anything humanity had ever dreamed of. But there was one caveat. It was unstable. The energy produced by dark matter and antimatter could be harnessed, but only for brief moments before the reaction became uncontrollable. "If we can stabilize it," Rivers had told President Blackwell in a private meeting, "we can use it. But it will be like wielding a firestorm. It will be destructive, chaotic, and the backlash could be disastrous." Despite the warnings, Blackwell had made the choice. Desperation had driven her to it. The discovery of the weapon was the turning point of humanity's fight against the Galactic Council. They were no longer just survivors. They were becoming the vengeful power that would challenge the status quo of the galaxy. The first use. The first successful test of Orion's flame was both a triumph and a harbinger of the destruction that was to come. It took place in the depths of the asteroid belt, far from any inhabited world. The weapon, housed in the core of a prototype warship, was aimed at a barren rock, a test target. General Ross had authorized the test personally, her command to the engineers sharp and direct. "We need results, no hesitation," she had said. Dr. Rivers, standing in the background, had a look of quiet dread as the countdown began. His fingers hovered over the controls, a bead of sweat forming on his brow. "Do you understand what this could do?" he asked Ross one last time. Ross only nodded. "I understand. Now, make it happen." The chamber hummed with power as the Orion reactor was activated. A surge of energy rippled through the ship, causing the walls to vibrate. Then, with a blast of light that seemed to tear through the very fabric of space, the weapon discharged. The asteroid vanished. In the blink of an eye, it was gone. Reduced to nothingness, not even dust remained. The energy from the reactor had disintegrated it on a molecular level, erasing all matter from existence. For a brief moment, the team aboard the ship stood in stunned silence. Then the alarms went off. The reactor was unstable, as Rivers had warned. The power levels had exceeded the safety threshold, and the ship's systems began to fail. The weapon had worked, but it had taken everything with it. The ship itself barely limped back to Earth. Yet the message had been received. Humanity now held the power to reshape the galaxy itself. A warning to the Council. General Ross knew that the time had come to take action. With the weapon now in their possession, humanity's first priority was to send a warning to the Galactic Council. A message that would shake them to their very core. The message was clear and simple. "We are not the weaklings you once thought we were. We will burn you for what you did to Durant. We will make you feel every ounce of the pain you have caused." The fleet gathered, a force of human warships, some newly constructed, others retrofitted with the technology of the Orion weapon, ready to strike. Their target: a world on the outskirts of Council-controlled space, a peaceful agricultural colony. It was a small, insignificant world in the grand scheme of things, but it was heavily populated by members of the Volith hegemony, a powerful military force within the Council. Its destruction would send the message loud and clear. As the human fleet entered the system, the inhabitants of the planet were unaware of the impending doom. The Volith had underestimated Earth, and now they would pay the price. The first blast of Orion's flame hit the planet's surface with such force that it cracked the planet in half. A shock wave of unimaginable energy radiated outward, incinerating everything in its path. The very air ignited, the oceans evaporated, and the land itself was scorched clean. What had once been a thriving world was now reduced to a lifeless husk, a mere memory of its former self. And the message was delivered. The Council responds. In the wake of the attack, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. News of the destruction spread like wildfire, and the mood in the chamber was one of disbelief and fear. The Volith hegemony had lost an entire planet, an entire civilization, in an instant. Humanity has gone too far, Orlovsk said, his voice trembling with rage. This is not just an act of war. This is an act of terror. The council members were divided. Some advocated for immediate retaliation, while others feared that the destruction of the Volith colony was only the beginning. Earth had just demonstrated that they possessed a weapon capable of obliterating entire systems. If humanity could wield such power, the Council would be nothing more than dust in the wind. "We must strike back," Creech, the reptilian leader, growled, his claws scraping against the Council table. "We cannot allow them to destabilize the galaxy. They must be stopped." But Orlosk knew better. The Council could retaliate, but at what cost? The humans had shown they could destroy anything in their path, and though the Council held vast military might, their advantage had just been neutralized by a weapon the likes of which they had never encountered. "The humans are no longer the weak, fractured species we once thought them to be," Orlosk said, his voice tinged with a rare hint of fear. "This war will be unlike anything the galaxy has ever seen. Humanity's war." Back on Earth, the human fleet prepared for the next phase of the war. With Orion's flame in their arsenal, the human race had become a force of destruction, one that the Galactic Council had underestimated. Earth's generals, commanders, and strategists knew that they could not afford to back down. The fight for survival had become a fight for revenge, and they would not stop until the Council felt the full weight of their wrath. Humanity had taken the first step into the galaxy's war, but as the conflict escalated, one thing became abundantly clear. This was no longer just a battle for peace, it was a war for the soul of the galaxy itself.